unrecorded conversations about very different matters connected to Johnny Congo as he played rounds at the golf club of Houston, where he had a junior executive membership, lunched on flounder sashimi and Jar Jar duck at Uchi, or dined on filet mignon, Brazilian style, at Chamagocha. Leaving no written record whatever, he handed over large amounts of cash to intermediaries who passed the thick wads of dead presidents onto the kind of men whose only interest in funerals lies in supplying the dead bodies. These individuals were then told to coordinate their activities via Rashad Trevane, a club owner whose House of Rashad holding company was 30% owned by the DSB Investment Trust, registered in the Cayman Islands. Deshaun Brown was known to take no active part in the running of Rashad's business. When he was photographed at the opening of yet another new joint, he'd tell reporters, "I've been tight with Rashad since we were skinny-ass little kids in first grade. When he came to me with his concepts for a new approach to upscale entertainment, it was my pleasure to invest. It's always good to help a friend, right? Turned out my man is about as good at his job as I am at mine. He's doing great. All his customers are guaranteed a good time, and I'm getting a great return on my money. Everyone's happy." Except for anyone who crossed Deshaun or Rashad, of course. They weren't happy at all. "Engines to neutral. Anchors away." In the Atlantic Ocean, 100 miles off the northern coast of Angola, Captain Cy Stamford brought the FPSO Bannock A to rest in 4,000 feet of water. Of all the vessels in the Bannock oil fleet, this one had the least imaginative or evocative name, and she didn't look any better than she sounded. A mighty supertanker may not possess the elegance of an America's Cup racing yacht, but there was something undeniably magnificent about its awesome size and presence, something majestic about its progress across the world's mightiest oceans. Bannock A was certainly built to supertanker scale. Her hull was long and wide enough to accommodate 3 stadium-sized professional soccer pitches laid end to end. Her tanks could hold around 100 million gallons of oil, weighing in at over 300,000 imperial tons. But she was as graceless as a hippo in a tutu. The day he took command, Stamford had Skyped his wife back home in Norfolk, Virginia. "How long have I been doing this, Mary?" he asked. "Longer than either of us care to think about, dear," she replied. "Exactly. And in all that time, I don't think I ever set to sea in an uglier tub than this one. Even her mother couldn't love her." The veteran skipper, who had spent more than 40 years in the U.S. Navy and the Merchant Marine, was speaking no more than the truth. With her blunt, shorn-off bows and box-like hull, Bannock A resembled nothing more than a cross between a gigantic barge and a grossly oversized container. To make matters worse, her decks were covered from end to end with a massive superstructure of steel pipes, tanks, columns, boilers, cranes, and cracking units, with what looked like a chimney, well over 100 feet tall and surrounded by a web of supporting girders, painted red and white, rising from the stern. Yet there was a reason that the board of Bannock Oil had sanctioned the expenditure of more than $1 billion to have this huge floating eyesore constructed at the Hyundai shipyards in Ulsan, South Korea, and then appointed their most experienced captain to command her on her maiden voyage of more than 12,000 miles. As FPSO Bannock A made her slow, cumbersome way through the Korean Straits and into the Yellow Sea, then on across the South China Sea, past Singapore and through the Malacca Straits to the Indian Ocean, all the way to the Cape of Good Hope, and then round into the Atlantic and up the west coast of Africa, the money men in Houston had been counting down the days to payback time. For the initials, FPSO stood for Floating Production, Storage and Offloading, and they described a kind of alchemy. Very soon, Bannock A would start taking up the oil produced by the rig that stood about 3 miles north of where she now lay at anchor.